What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another UFC breakdown and predictions video, this time for episode 7 of Dana White's Contender series. Now, last week, we were one split decision away from a 5-0 sweep. The episode before that, the week before, we were also one split decision away from sweeping the card, which would have been 4-0. So we went 3-0 episode 5, 3-1 episode 5, 4-1 episode 6. So I'm hoping we can replicate episode 3 where we swept the card and went 5-0, but I'm not going to lie, this episode seems a little bit tricky. There's a couple of matches that are pretty evenly matched in my opinion. Also, it seems like in some of these fights I'm picking the lesser of the two opponents, which is kind of odd, but I do have my reasoning, which we will go over in the breakdowns. Now, I was trying to type out my notes. They deleted on me. I'm not retyping them. I have them here, so if you see me flipping pages, it's all good. It's all good. I just want to get the breakdown. I want to be thorough in my breakdown, and we have the notes here, so it's all good. Make sure you hit that like button. Comment down below what you think of episode 7 and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Starting off episode 7, we have a strawweight bout. We got Rose Conceicao going up against Alexia Thainara. Now, these two ladies are pretty similar in terms of their style of fighting. Now, on the Conceicao side, she is a 7-time Brazilian national wrestling champion. So if that doesn't tell you what kind of style of fighter she is, I don't know if I can help you. She wants to get the fight to the ground. That is her bread and butter, and she does a really good job controlling her opponents once she gets it there. Now, in terms of her striking, she has a nice 1-2. She has a solid 1-2, but typically she wants to counter strike. Now, she does a great job fighting on her back foot. I've seen in her fights, she does get backed up a little bit too much. She's not really on the front foot as often as I'd like to see, but she has great check hooks to counter her opponent in their entries. Now, her striking defense is also pretty solid. She has great movement and always keeps a high guard, which is great. Now, she is kind of low volume, though, which stresses me out a little bit. But like I said, she is a counter striker, and somebody like Thainara is going to push that pace. She's going to provide that pressure on the feet, and it's going to allow a lot of striking opportunities, counter striking opportunities for Conceicao. Now, on the Thainara side, like I said, she has a similar style to Conceicao. There are a few glaring differences, though. She's a decent striker, but ultimately wants to wrestle. Like I said, similar to Conceicao. But the differences, in my opinion, are Thainara is slightly quicker and more explosive on the feet. She provides that forward pressure. But like I said, Conceicao does a great job fighting off of her back foot and dealing with that pressure well with those counter strikes. Now, in terms of the wrestling, Thainara does also want to wrestle, but she doesn't seem to have as much success controlling or maintaining control of her opponents. If you go off of Thainara's last opponent, you're going to think that she is like this crazy strong wrestler. She was throwing her opponent around. I think her name was Sabrina Oliveira. I'm going to double check. Yeah, Sabrina. So it actually wasn't her last fight, but 2 fights ago, she was ragdolling this girl, but I think I just don't think Oliveira is very strong, and that's why you kind of saw that dominance from Thainara. But I don't think she'll have the same success against somebody like Conceicao. Now, originally, Alexia Thainara was supposed to fight Fatima Klein, who stepped up on short notice a couple of months ago, I believe, to fight Jasmine Jasudavicius in the UFC. So they found a replacement for her, which was Rose, but it's not that short of a notice because Fatima Klein stepped in to fight Jasmine in July. So she's had quite some time. She's basically had 2 full months to train. So it's not crazy short notice. Regardless, I think Rose actually does get this done. I really like her counter striking. Thainara is going to bring that pressure, so there's going to leave a lot of openings for Conceicao. And if this does get to the mat, I think Conceicao has the advantage there, and typically she will be able to find and maintain more control than Thainara does in the wrestling. So I will take Rose Conceicao to get this done. Let's continue on. We have a featherweight bout next up, which is Kevin Vallejos going up against Cam Teague. Now, if you guys are familiar with the Contender series, Kevin Vallejos is making a return. Last season, he fought Gene Silva. And I actually had Kevin Vallejos in that matchup because I just truly thought that Kevin was going to beat Gene. That's before we figured out how good of a fighter Silva is. He's been dominating since he entered the UFC, so you can't really hold Vallejos hold that against Vallejos too much, because that's his only loss in his career. And at 22 years old, being 13-1, that's plenty of experience. And he doesn't fight like a 22-year-old. The guy is calm, composed, and he is he's methodical in his fights. He basically fights like a vet at 22 years of age. Now, he does also have a fantastic overall skill set. The guy is good anywhere the fight takes place. And like I said, the methodical part of his game is that if he hurts his opponent, he doesn't force anything and try to freak out and try to finish the fight. He lets that final shot present itself. Now, mainly he is a counter striker, and he fights well off of his back foot, similar to Rose Conceicao, who we just broke down. Now, he's also tough as hell. The guy went to war with a killer in Gene Silva and survived the entire 15 minutes. He also was landing his own shots. I'm pretty sure he lost 29-28 unanimously, so he did win a round over Gene Silva, which right now seems extremely impressive considering the run Gene Silva is on in the UFC right now. Now, Cam Teague. Here is a short notice replacement fight as well. Kevin Vallejos was supposed to fight a fighter named Luke Riley, and I guess Luke Riley had visa issues, so he wasn't able to accept. He couldn't get to Vegas to fight Kevin. So in comes Cam Teague. I was going to say Tam Keeg. Jesus. So another kind of short notice situation here. Now, it says 6 foot on his Tapology page, but when I'm watching the tail of the tapes, it says that he's 5'10" and that he has a 72-inch reach. I can't confirm this because Tapology typically is updated and stuff. But from what I know, he is, according to Tapology, he's 6 feet tall. And if he is 6 feet tall, that is going to play a big factor in this fight against Kevin Vallejos, because Kevin Vallejos is 5'7". He's a small guy, and he only has a 68-inch reach. So if those statistics are correct, Cam Teague will be 5 inches taller with a 4-inch reach advantage on in the striking. So that is going to play a big factor here, especially because Vallejos, he's okay with fighting off his back foot, and it's going to be tough because he's a counter striker. It will be tough to deal with that range, especially if Cam can kind of like do some pop shots in and out. It'll be tough for Vallejos to get to Cam, but Cam Teague is extremely durable, and he is a very tough guy. In his last fight, he fought former UFC fighter Austin Lingo and finished him at the end of the second round. Now, this was literally a war of attrition. Both of them went back and forth the entire time. And even though Cam is extremely tough, this guy is basically a walking punching bag. He does not care what comes his way. He just keeps moving forward and doesn't care to trade shots. He'll take one to give one every single time. But yeah, he's willing to exchange shots in the pocket. He has solid forward pressure, but because he just lacks head movement, and because of that, he is extremely hittable. He is a pretty solid striker, though. He mixes kicks in well and has decent combinations. He has this ability to make every single fight he's a part of a dog fight, and the way he wins them is basically just continuously moving forward and discouraging his opponents to a point where they mentally break and he finishes them. That's how Cam Teague wins, and he's made a career out of it so far. He's 7-0 with that fighting style, so it's kind of insane. But I will take Kevin Vallejos here, because if you are going to be that hittable against somebody like Vallejos who truly has KO power, I don't think it's going to be good for Cam. I think Cam's going to eat a lot of big shots, and somebody like Vallejos will be able to put him away. Not to mention the fact that, like we said, this is a little bit short notice for Cam Teague, and I don't think that's going to play well. I'm really high on Kevin Vallejos this week. Hopefully we get a good line so that we can make a little bit of bread. But I am going to go with Kevin Vallejos here. Let's move on to this next fight, which is actually a light heavyweight fight, not a welterweight fight. We got Francesco Mazzeo going up against Kevin Christian. Now, this is one of those fights where this is the closest thing to a coin flip you can get to for lots of reasons. Both of these guys have power. Both of them are a little bit wild, and both of them can gas. So it's just going to determine I think the outcome will be determined by which version of each of these fighters enter the cage. Now, on the Francesco Mazzeo side, he is a bruiser. He crashes the pocket with big power every time and with no regard of his own safety. If he lands, though, typically that spells disaster for his opponents. It is devastating when he lands and he KOs his opponents. He is only 4-0, though, so he is pretty green in mixed martial arts, but he truly does have knockout power. He can get taken down and controlled, but he's shown that he has a solid enough get-up game where he won't be stuck there for the entire round. And he hardly fires off any straight shots. Most of his shots are extremely looping and with 100% power behind them every single time he throws. Now and he also can gas out a little bit because he has all those big actions in his fights. He tends to gas. So that's not a good sign on the Mazzeo side. Now, if you go to Kevin Christian, this guy is 6'7" with an 80-inch reach. That's insane. This guy could easily fight at heavyweight if he put some pounds on. But yeah, he is a massive human being. And we just saw somebody like Taliesin Teixeira last episode, 6'8", 82-inch reach, I believe, or 81. And just massive human beings. That's what Kevin Christian is as well. Sometimes he uses his length properly, similar to how we just watched Bahamundez knock out Manuel Torres at UFC 306. He does a good job with kind of like getting close to his opponent. His opponent fires off a shot. He backs up because he's so long and rangy, and he just comes forward and counters. Ignacio Bahamundez just did that exact move back-to-back and knocked out Manuel Torres that way. And in Kevin Christian's last fight, we saw him find some success in that manner. So that is something we could see here, especially considering Mazzeo is only 6'2". I don't know how long his reach is, but I could not imagine it being near Kevin Christian's, maybe like 74, but that's still giving up half a foot of a reach disadvantage. Now, he also does get a little bit wild, though. Like I said, he can use his length effectively, but I don't know if it's like he gets like emotional or he's just really excited. But sometimes he throws that length out the window. He will enter the pocket and swing extremely wild, which obviously is not going to be good against somebody like Mazzeo who has that KO power. Kevin Christian seems like he has a grappling threat as well. He has some submissions on his record, but it's not something that I've really seen from him. In his last LFA fight, he's only fought once in the past 5 years, I believe. I'm going to double check that. Previous to his January 27th bout in the LFA, he fought back in September of 2019. So it's been quite some time. He came back in the LFA, and he knocked out his opponent 39 seconds into the second round. But there's a few things that worried me from there. He got knocked down in that first round. And that's where we saw a little bit of his grappling game. I think he was able to threaten an armbar there. But in that second round, after finishing his opponent, he fell to the canvas up against the cage and looked completely exhausted. So the fact he's only fought once in the past 5 years, these two are just, the size is what worries me in this specific matchup. But I still think I'm going to go with the Mazzeo side. Kevin Christian, if he's methodical, if he stays at range, wide stance, in and out kind of style, he will be able to piece up Mazzeo and eventually find a finish. But I don't think he's going to do that because he throws that game plan out the window early in his fights. Both of these guys are going to crack. Both of these guys can crack. Both of them have KO power, and both of them can gas as well. So ultimately, this is going to come down to whose chin holds up and who wants it more. And I haven't seen Mazzeo really hurt. I've seen him dominated in like wrestling and grappling and things like that, but I don't think Kevin Christian's going to go to that portion of his fighting unless he 100% has to. I think both these guys are just going to swing heavy, and one of them is going to go down. I'm going to go with the Mazzeo side because I haven't seen Mazzeo get dropped, whereas I saw somebody come back from 5 years off and get almost put out in the first round of their LFA fight in Kevin Christian. So I will go with Francesco Mazzeo here, or Mazzeo, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but with the smallest amount of confidence known to mankind. Let's move on to the co-main event here. We got Daniel Frunza going up against Vadim Kutsyi. Now, originally when I saw this, I thought I was going to go with Vadim, but I'm not going to. And these are one of the fights I was talking about earlier where I feel like I'm picking the worst fighter out of the two, but you got Daniel Frunza. He is a striker 100%. Once he takes the center of the octagon or the cage, he doesn't give it up. If his opponent tries to back him up and take that position from him, he plants his feet and fires back and counters. He does get hit, though, in those exchanges, but he will not give up that center, the center of the cage. Now, he can get taken down and controlled. He can get taken down and controlled up against the cage. We've seen that in his fights, and most recently in his last fight, which was October 2023 against Haris Talunzic. He was going to lose that fight, but he finished his opponent with 1 second left, and that just goes to show that he is not a quitter. He doesn't give up on himself, even if he is losing. He continuously moves forward to try to get that finish. He does have that solid forward pressure, and he has decent hands with lots of power, as we already mentioned. Now, he was originally supposed to fight on last week's episode against Matt Dixon, but Matt Dixon, I guess it says he got injured here, so he got a new opponent in Vadim Kutsyi, who I don't even think was scheduled to fight on the Contender Series, so that's something to take into consideration. Also, the fact that Vadim has not fought since December of 2022. So that's another thing you got to take into consideration. Now, on the Kutsyi side, he is a tank. He is physically strong guy, absolute tank with KO power. He loves to kick, and he will attack the legs and go up top afterwards, but he loves that leg kick. His cardio is no bueno. This guy has one round, a little bit more than one round, maybe 6 or 7 minutes worth of cardio, but in that second round, you will see him full mouth open, just huffing and puffing, trying to get through the fight. His volume goes down. He's not as explosive with his takedowns, his shots. He slows down immensely after that first round. He does have great wrestling and grappling control, though, and that's one of the reasons why I was hesitant to go with Daniel Frunza, because I've seen him struggle in that department. Now, it's just, like I said, I can see a path where Vadim finds those takedowns and just basically wrestles the entire time and ends up winning. Obviously, that's not going to be contract worthy, but I can see him doing that. The problem with that is, though, Daniel Frunza is not one that's going to quit. He is probably coming in here with a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of motivation to get that contract. He seems like that kind of a guy. And even though he can struggle in the wrestling and grappling, like we've mentioned plenty of times, he doesn't give up on himself. He's going to continuously move forward. And I think he has better cardio than Vadim. I can see Vadim having success early with the wrestling. Even he has KO power as well. He could crack Frunza here and wobble him, but I just think that Frunza weathers that early wrestling and grappling storm, maybe the clinch control that Vadim's going to be able to apply on him. Leg kicks are going to be successful for Vadim, but after that first round, he's going to start slowing, and Daniel Frunza will continuously move forward, smother him with pressure, and just, I think, eventually wear down Vadim, and that's why I'm going to go with Daniel Frunza to get this done, but very reluctantly as well. So let's move on to the main event of the evening. We got Bailey Shoenfelder going up against Danilo Voievodkin. Now, I'm actually familiar with Bailey. I've watched him a few times in Bellator, and he is actually a pretty solid fighter. He's only 5-0, so he's pretty green. He's only 27 years old as well, but the guy is a lighter heavyweight than we're used to. I think he's around like 225, 230, which sometimes isn't the best, because if you go up against somebody that's going to wrestle with you, they can lay on top and they're a bigger human being. They're going to be heavier going into fight night as well. So that's something to keep into consideration, but he's going up against a kickboxer in Danilo, so I don't think he's going to have to worry about that portion too much. Now, because he's a little bit lighter, he moves very well for a big man. He is a former collegiate football player, I believe, so he is an athletic guy despite his size. Now, he has beautiful ground and pound once he gets the fight there, and he has fantastic ground control. Going up against a kickboxer like Danilo, I think this is going to be a great path to victory for him. He doesn't necessarily bring the fight, I don't think he offensively wrestles. He also does like to strike, but he is opportunistic. If he finds that opening to try to get the fight down there, I think that's going to be a good game plan for him. He should, in this specific matchup, probably have that as your number one game plan. Maybe sit there and strike with Danilo for a little bit, but then mix in that clinch, try to get some trips, some throws, get the fight down to the ground, because I believe he has that advantage. He does well controlling his opponents, and he ground and pounds extremely well. He's finished his opponents, multiple of his opponents, through ground and pound. Now, Danilo Voievodkin, all right, this is, if you look at this guy's Tapology page, you'd be like, what an animal. First fight in MMA, 12-second knockout. Then it's a 28-second knockout, 11-second knockout, then an 18-second knockout. The next one is a 3-minute key lock submission against a 12-53 fighter. Okay? So take that, who's been submitted 24 times. So just take that. Take that into consideration. And then in his most recent fight, he went up against a 1-0 fighter, knocked him out in 53 seconds. If you look at Danilo's MMA opponents, these guys are all, they do not look like fighters. They're all out of shape heavyweights that can't take a punch, can't fight, and it just makes his record look really good, like at 6-0. And a former kickboxer, like I said, but in MMA, he has not fought like a true opponent like Bailey Shoenfelder. I'm telling you right now, if you go watch some of his fights on YouTube, it's not going to take you very long, because in total, you're probably going to have to watch like 5 minutes for all 6 of his fights. But yeah, his opponents are just nowhere near the level of Shoenfelder. I'm not saying Shoenfelder's some like world beater, but in comparison to Voievodkin's previous opponents, yes, Bailey Shoenfelder is going to be a world beater in comparison. Now, I don't really know, like, other than the kickboxing of Danilo, which I'm sure is going to help him in this matchup. I just don't. He hasn't fought anybody in MMA that's going to show how good he is as an MMA fighter. And somebody like Bailey Shoenfelder, who I've seen find success in MMA. I've seen him do well. He's an athletic guy, good cardio. He can dominate on the ground against somebody like Danilo, who is a former kickboxer that hasn't really had to wrestle or grapple in his MMA fights. I'm going to have to go with Bailey here. I just think he has more paths to victory. I think he'll surprise Danilo with the level of competitor he is in MMA specifically. And honestly, Bailey Shoenfelder, even though he only has a 5-0 record, he has 2 fights in the LFA, 2 in Bellator, and 1 in CFFC. And the person that he fought in CFFC was Greg Velasco, took his heavyweight belt. And Greg Velasco, if you guys are familiar with the Contender series, he fought Shamil Gaziev last season. And yes, he did get choked out in the first round, but that is a decent competition, considering if the UFC brought him to the Contender series, obviously they think that that fighter specifically is good. And Greg Velasco was on the show last season. And Bailey Shoenfelder made it look somewhat easy, even though he did it in the second round. The only thing that Shoenfelder struggled with was getting held up against the cage by Greg Velasco. Velasco landed a couple of big shots as well, but they did not phase Shoenfelder whatsoever. And yeah, man, I just think he gets this done. Honestly, I just think he's the better mixed martial artist. I don't think Danilo has fought anybody near the skill level of Shoenfelder in MMA, and I'm going to go with Shoenfelder here. But those are going to be all the picks, guys. So we're going to go with Rose Conceicao, Kevin Vallejos, Francesco Mazzeo, Daniel Frunza, and Bailey Shoenfelder. Now, in terms of levels of confidence, I think Kevin Vallejos is my most confident pick this week. My second most confident will probably be Bailey Shoenfelder, then Rose Conceicao. I'd say Daniel Frunza, and then Francesco Mazzeo. So that's going to be the level of confidence for all of my picks. But thank you guys once again for watching another breakdown and predictions video. Make sure you hit that like button, drop a subscription to the channel if you're new, and drop some comments down below and let me know what you guys think of episode 7. Let's go for that 5-0 sweep. I will see you guys on Tuesday when I do the Fight Companion. Peace.